Welcome to the Retirement Wealth Podcast. We're so glad you're joining us today.
Absolutely. It's great to be here. Planning for retirement can feel like a daunting task, right?
Yeah, it really can. One of the biggest questions people face is how to estimate their retirement expenses.
Exactly. It's crucial to have a good grasp on what those expenses will be so you can create a plan that actually works for you.
Right. So today we're going to dive into some really practical ways to estimate those costs. We'll talk about the different categories of expenses, how to consider things like healthcare, travel, and even hobbies.
And we'll touch on the importance of factoring in inflation and unexpected expenses too, because, life happens.
For sure. And I think it's important to remind our listeners that this doesn't have to be overwhelming.
Absolutely. With the right tools and mindset, it can actually be pretty empowering.
So let's get into it. David, where do you think is a good starting point for figuring out retirement expenses?
Emily, it's so crucial for folks to really dig into estimating their retirement expenses right now. With all the economic shifts we're seeing, it's like a perfect storm of factors that can affect their plans.
Absolutely, David. Retirement timelines have really changed over the years. It used to be that people could comfortably plan on a set number of years, but now, with life expectancies increasing, they might need to prepare for 30 years or more.
Right, that means their expenses can really add up. I remember talking to a couple not too long ago. They were in their mid-60s and thought they'd be fine with their savings. But when we started breaking down their expenses, healthcare, travel, even just everyday costs, they realized they hadn't fully accounted for inflation.
Oh, that's such a classic oversight. Inflation can be sneaky, can't it? Like, what seems reasonable today might not be in 10 or 20 years.
Exactly. And with current inflation rates, even a few percentage points can make a big difference. For instance, if they're planning on living off a fixed income and not adjusting for inflation, they might find themselves in a tough spot.
And let's not forget about market volatility. With the way the markets have been bouncing around lately, it's hard to predict how investments will perform.
Yep. I had a client who retired just before a market downturn, and they were relying heavily on their investment portfolio for income. They had to rethink their whole strategy because their withdrawals were taking a bigger hit than they expected.
That's such a stressful situation. Being retired and then facing those kind of fluctuations can really shake your sense of security.
Exactly, which is why having a solid understanding of expenses can help mitigate that stress. If they know what they need to cover, they can adjust their withdrawal strategies accordingly, right?
And speaking of adjustments, taxes are another huge factor. The tax landscape is constantly changing, and if someone's income shifts post-retirement, it could really impact their tax bracket.
For sure. I had a client who didn't realize how much taxes would eat into his Social Security benefits. He was shocked when I showed him how much he could lose just by not planning for it.
Oh, wow. That sounds like a wake-up call. It's one of those things that people often overlook, but it can hit hard when you're not prepared.
And then there's healthcare costs. Those are on the rise too, and they can be a big part of retirement expenses. Medicare is great, but it doesn't cover everything. Right?
Right, and many retirees forget about things like long-term care insurance or out-of-pocket medical expenses. I've heard stories where people had to dip into their savings significantly because they didn't plan for those costs.
It's a tough reality. I remember a woman who thought she'd be fine with her savings until her husband developed a health issue. Suddenly, they were facing bills that were way beyond what they had budgeted for.
That's heartbreaking. It really emphasizes the importance of not just looking at what you want to spend on fun things, like travel, but also being realistic about those unexpected costs.
Yes, and then there's the emotional side of it all. Feeling secure in your financial situation can really affect your overall happiness in retirement.
Oh, definitely. I've seen retirees who have a solid financial plan and they just shine with confidence. They're relaxed, enjoying life, while others are constantly worried about their finances.
It's such a big difference. And with legacy planning too, if someone wants to leave something for their children or charity, they need to understand how their expenses could impact that goal.
It's like a puzzle, isn't it? You can't just look at one piece without considering how it fits into the whole picture.
Exactly. And right now, with all these shifting economic trends, it's more important than ever to get a clear picture of what retirement looks like financially.
So true. It's about being proactive rather than reactive.
For sure. The sooner someone starts estimating their expenses, the better prepared they'll be, and it gives them the flexibility to adjust their plans as needed.
And it really helps reduce that anxiety, knowing that they've got a plan in place. It's empowering, isn't it?
It really is. And I think once they understand their expenses, they can start to look at strategies to manage their retirement funds more effectively.
Exactly. Which leads us right into how to estimate those expenses realistically.
So, Emily, when it comes to estimating your retirement expenses, one of the first things we should talk about is understanding your lifestyle. What do you envision for your retirement?
Right, it's so important to actually picture that. Are we talking about traveling, hobbies, maybe downsizing your home?
Exactly. It helps to break it down into categories like housing, healthcare, travel, and leisure. A good rule of thumb is to anticipate that you'll need about 70 to 80% of your pre-retirement income to maintain your lifestyle.
That makes sense. So if someone was earning, say, $100,000 a year, they might want to plan for about $70,000 to $80,000 annually in retirement?
Yes, that's a solid estimate. But remember, everyone's situation is unique. For instance, if you're planning to travel extensively or take up new hobbies, you might want to budget a bit more.
And what about the actual expenses? How do you keep track of those?
Good question. A practical way to start is by keeping a detailed budget of your current expenses. Look at where your money goes now and think about what may change. For example, you might pay off your mortgage, which could lower housing costs, but then you might have new expenses, like healthcare.
Speaking of healthcare, how do you factor that into your planning?
Healthcare can be a big one. It's often estimated that a couple might spend around $300,000 in out-of-pocket healthcare costs during retirement. So consider your Medicare options and any supplemental insurance.
Wow, that's a significant amount. I guess it's really key to have a good handle on those future costs.
Absolutely. Now, let's talk about income sources. You'll likely have a mix: Social Security, investments, maybe even annuities. Knowing what you can rely on helps you gauge how much you'll need to withdraw from your savings.
Right, and Social Security can be tricky. How do you optimize that?
Well, the longer you wait to claim Social Security, the bigger your benefit will be. You can start as early as 62, but if you wait until full retirement age or even age 70, benefits can increase by 8% each year.
That's a good incentive to hold off a bit, isn't it?
Definitely, and when you're thinking about your investments, it's important to have a well-diversified portfolio. A common strategy is the 70-30th split, 70% in stocks and 30% in bonds. This can provide growth while still offering some stability.
Yeah, but how do you decide the best mix for your own situation?
It really depends on your risk tolerance and how close you are to retirement. If you're several years away, you might lean more towards stocks for growth. But if you're close, you might want to shift more into bonds to preserve capital.
And what about withdrawal strategies? I've heard of the 4% rule. How does that work?
The 4% rule is a classic guideline. It suggests that if you withdraw 4% of your retirement savings each year, you should be able to sustain your money for about 30 years. But it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. Market conditions and your personal spending could affect that.
So if you had $1 million saved, you could take out about $40,000 a year?
Exactly. But keep in mind inflation and market fluctuations. That's where a bucket strategy comes in. You essentially divide your assets into buckets for different time frames: short-term, medium-term, and long-term.
That sounds interesting. So you'd have one bucket for immediate expenses, maybe in cash or short-term bonds, and another for growth over the long term?
You've got it. The short-term bucket covers your needs for the first few years, while the long-term bucket can be more aggressive, potentially invested in stocks for growth.
That seems like a smart way to manage risk while still having access to cash when you need it.
Exactly. And it's also important to think about tax-advantaged accounts like 401, KS IRAs, and Roth IRAs. Each has its own tax implications, which can significantly affect your retirement savings.
Right, so contributing to a 401k reduces your taxable income now, while a Roth IRA lets you withdraw tax-free later?
Yes, and knowing when to withdraw from each type can save you on taxes. For example, some retirees might choose to withdraw from their taxable accounts first to let their tax-advantaged accounts grow longer.
That sounds like a solid tax-saving strategy. What about real estate? Does that play a role in retirement expenses?
It can. If you own your home outright, that's a big expense you can eliminate. Some people even downsize or move to a lower-cost area to free up cash for retirement.
So it sounds like having a clear picture of your assets and how they'll support your expenses is essential.
Absolutely. And don't forget about annuities. They can provide guaranteed income for life, which can be comforting for many retirees. Just be sure to understand the fees involved.
Right, that's a big factor. So the key takeaways here are to estimate your expenses realistically, understand your income sources, and consider the right investment strategies.
Exactly. And as you plan, keep in mind that life can be unpredictable. It's crucial to stay flexible and adjust your strategy as needed.
That's a great point. I think a lot of people might underestimate how much planning goes into retirement.
Yes, and it's easy to overlook some details.
Speaking of which, what are some common pitfalls people fall into while estimating their retirement expenses?
Well, one of the biggest is assuming that everything will stay the same, financially and otherwise. Let's dive into that. So, Emily, one of the first common pitfalls I see is what's called sequence of returns risk.
Right, that sounds pretty technical. Can you break that down a bit?
Sure. Essentially, it refers to the risk of receiving lower or negative investment returns early in retirement. It's like if the market dips right when you start withdrawing, it can really impact your long-term savings.
Oh, I see. That makes sense. So if someone's relying on those investments to live on, a downturn can really hurt them.
Exactly. I had a client, let's call him Tom. He retired in 2008, just before the market crash. He was pulling from his retirement accounts while the market was tanking.
Ouch! That must have been tough.
It really was. He ended up having to adjust his lifestyle significantly because those early losses meant he had to withdraw more to maintain his income, which further depleted his savings.
So what can someone do to protect against that?
A good strategy is to have a diversified approach, with some safe investments that aren't as tied to the stock market. Also, having a cash reserve for the first few years of retirement can help.
That's a smart idea. What about taxes? I've heard that's another area where people stumble.
Absolutely. Many retirees underestimate the impact of taxes on their withdrawals. They think, I'll just take out what I need, without considering how that affects their tax bracket.
Yeah, that sounds like a trap. I guess if they're not careful, they could end up paying more than they anticipated.
Exactly. I had a couple, let's call them the Johnsons. They retired and started withdrawing funds without a tax strategy. They didn't realize that taking larger withdrawals all at once pushed them into a higher tax bracket, and they ended up owing a lot more to the IRS than they expected.
Wow, that's a real eye-opener. So how can retirees plan better for taxes?
Well, working with a financial advisor to create a tax-efficient withdrawal strategy is key. They can help you stagger withdrawals from different accounts, like taxable versus tax-deferred, to minimize the tax bite.
That sounds really important. What's another common mistake you see?
Underestimating healthcare costs is huge. Many people think Medicare will cover most of their expenses, but out-of-pocket costs can still add up significantly.
Right. I've heard that healthcare can be one of the biggest expenses in retirement.
Absolutely. I had a client, let's call her Susan. She thought she'd be fine with Medicare alone, but ended up needing a lot of unexpected medical care. By the end of the year, she realized she hadn't budgeted nearly enough for those expenses.
That's tough. So should people consider supplemental insurance?
Yes, definitely. A Medicare supplement plan can help cover some of those costs. It's also wise to factor in potential long-term care needs. You never know what might happen, and it's better to be prepared.
That's a great point. What about asset allocation? I imagine that can be a tricky area too.
It really can be. Many retirees are too conservative, especially if they're worried about market volatility. They might hold too much in cash or bonds, which can lead to lower growth over time.
So they might miss out on growth they actually need?
Exactly. I had a couple who were super risk averse. They took most of their portfolio and put it in low yield savings accounts. While they felt safe, They didn't realize their money wasn't keeping up with inflation.
That's frustrating. How can they find a balance?
A balanced approach is key. Working with a financial advisor to determine an appropriate asset allocation based on their risk tolerance and retirement timeline can make a big difference.
And what about Social Security? I've heard people can mess that up too.
Oh yes, claiming Social Security too early is a big mistake many make. It can permanently reduce their benefits.
I guess it's tempting to take it as soon as you can, right?
It is. I had a client, let's call her Linda. She started claiming at 62 because she wanted that income right away. But she didn't consider that her benefit would be significantly lower than if she had waited until her full retirement age or even longer.
So what's the best strategy for claiming Social Security?
Ideally, think about your health, your financial situation, and your need for income. Sometimes it can make sense to wait, especially if you can afford to. The longer you wait, the larger your monthly benefit.
That's really helpful. It sounds like there are a lot of moving parts in retirement planning.
Absolutely. And that's why it's crucial to have a comprehensive plan in place. Spotting red flags early can really help you avoid these pitfalls.
So what should someone be on the lookout for?
Well, if you notice you're not tracking your expenses closely, or if you're feeling unsure about your investment strategy, those are signs to take action. And if your healthcare costs are rising without a plan, that's another red flag.
It sounds like being proactive is key.
Yes, taking the time to review your plan regularly and adjust as needed can really help ensure you're on the right path.
So what are some next steps someone can take to avoid these pitfalls?
Start by creating a detailed retirement budget, considering all possible expenses, including healthcare, and consult with a financial advisor who can help you navigate these complexities.
That sounds like a solid plan. Getting educated and working with a pro can really make a difference.
Definitely. And remember, it's never too late to adjust your plan. Just being aware of these pitfalls puts you in a much better position to succeed in retirement.
Great advice, David. I think our listeners will find this really valuable.
I hope so. It's all about setting yourself up for a comfortable, secure retirement. So now that we've talked about estimating your retirement expenses, let's dive into some immediate steps people can take, right?
Absolutely. It's all about taking those first steps. What's one of the easiest things someone can do today?
Well, one of the most effective tools out there is the retirement calculators from companies like Vanguard, Fidelity, or Schwab. You know, these calculators can help you project your retirement expenses based on your current savings and expected income.
Oh, I love those. They're super user-friendly, and you can usually find them right on their websites.
Exactly. Just plug in your numbers, and they'll give you a clearer picture of what your future might look like. Plus, they often allow you to adjust variables like retirement age or planned spending, which is really helpful for making those projections more accurate.
And speaking of adjusting variables, I think many folks might overlook the Social Security Administration's website, right?
Yes. SSA.gov is a goldmine for understanding your Social Security benefits. You can create an account to see your earnings history and get estimates on your future benefits.
That's so important. It's like having a foundation for your retirement income.
Definitely. And then there's tax software that can help you understand how your withdrawals during retirement will affect your tax situation.
That's huge. Planning for taxes can sometimes feel overwhelming, but having that software helps break it down.
Right. And I recommend checking out apps like Mint or YNAB. You Need a Budget, because they can help track your spending habits now, which is great for projecting future expenses.
Yes, tracking your expenses is key. It gives you a real sense of where your money goes and what you might want to adjust moving forward.
And if you're looking for a little more insight, there are some fantastic books on retirement planning. The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey is a solid choice.
I've heard great things about that one. What about podcasts?
Oh, absolutely. Retirement Answer Man is a great resource. It dives into practical strategies for retirement planning and is very approachable.
That sounds like a good one to check out. So let's talk about habits. What are some small changes people can start today to improve their retirement planning?
Well, I always say, start by reviewing your portfolio quarterly. Just a simple check-in to see how your investments are performing can help you stay on track.
That's a manageable task. And running those retirement projections regularly, like maybe every 6 months, can keep your plans aligned with your goals too, right?
Exactly. It's about staying engaged with your plan. And remember, it's never too late to make adjustments.
Right. Even if someone is nearing retirement, they can still make impactful changes that could improve their financial outlook.
Absolutely. And small habits can lead to big changes over time. Consider setting aside just a little bit more each month, or even looking into a side gig to boost your savings.
Those are great ideas. I think a lot of people forget that even a small increase in savings can add up.
Exactly. And don't hesitate to reach out to a financial advisor if you're feeling unsure. A professional can provide personalized advice based on your unique situation.
That's so true. Getting expert guidance can really help clarify things, especially when it comes to navigating complex retirement decisions.
And remember, it's all about creating a plan that gives you peace of mind in your retirement years.
So, those are some practical first steps. Now, let's bring this all together.
Well, Emily, I think we covered a lot of ground today.
Absolutely, David. We really broke down how to estimate those retirement expenses, huh?
For sure. One key takeaway is the importance of understanding your fixed versus variable expenses, knowing what you can count on every month versus what might change.
Right. And then there's the whole healthcare piece. Estimating those costs can feel a bit daunting, but it's crucial to factor them in, especially as we age.
Exactly. And let's not forget about the lifestyle choices, like travel or hobbies. Those can really add up, so having a realistic picture of those desires is vital.
Yeah, and I loved how we talked about creating that buffer for unexpected expenses. It's so important to have a little wiggle room in your budget, right?
Totally. And remember, it's all about building and protecting your retirement wealth. Taking the time to plan now can really pay off in the long run.
Definitely. And for anyone listening, if you found value in today's discussion, we'd love for you to like and subscribe, and maybe even drop a comment sharing your biggest takeaway or any questions you might have.
And don't forget to share this episode with someone who might be planning for or is already in retirement. It could really help them out.
Oh, and next time, we'll dive into a topic that's super important: safe withdrawal rate explained for beginners.
That's right. Understanding how much you can withdraw safely from your retirement savings is key to ensuring your money lasts.
So, stay tuned for that.
Thanks for joining us today, everyone.
Yeah, we really appreciate you being here. Take care, and we'll talk again soon.